Welcome back to the SEO Weekly, where queries are weird, advice is controversial, and everything depends. I'm your host, Garrett Sussman of iPullRank, and each week we cover all the news in the world of SEO, whether it's things going on with Google, cool articles on how to do stuff, Twitter, threads, new tools, communities, you name it. If you're into this series, then please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Hit that like button, turn on notifications, and share to your heart's content on social. I really appreciate it. And it gets that, YouTube SEO algo going. So what happened this week? Well, major May 2022 Google algorithm core update. We've got a really cool study from Cyrus Shepard over at Zyppy all about internal linking. And Joost de Valk put together, a good, advocate article all around why you need to be mindful of your URLs and crawling for the environment. Let's dive in. What makes SEOs quake in their boots? What really shakes them to the core with fears? Well, it's a core update because they're so unpredictable. And last week, the May 2022 core algorithm update was announced. It's being rolled out as we speak. It's hard to see, hard to know exactly how this is going to impact everything because it's so vague. Ultimately, Google's goal, as they announced, is to kind of, get search results right. What does that mean in the eyes of Google? Well, that could mean, including more rich, feature enhancements, especially with the output of MUM. It could mean, giving more authority sites, boosting them up to the rankings, penalizing sites that are maybe trying to take advantage of certain loopholes, improve content, and improve the user experience. Typically with SEOs, you wait a few days, wait a few weeks, you start to see what sort of sites are surging, what sites are dropping. Actually, Glenn Gabe is already starting to see results. Some sites that were impacted significantly from updates back in June, July, or all the way back in November of last year might have seen some kind of regulation. And even with these algorithm updates, there are kind of residual tremors that happen over the next few months as well. It's not like it's just set in stone. Google is always kind of trying to adjust the different factors. It's not that there's one person doing it, but generally they're trying to adjust the factors to get it right. That's actually a core conceit of our own Mike King's concept of content engineering, how Google is like turning up the dial for, one thing, maybe it's like the value of certain types of links versus another thing, the content on page. They're always trying to adjust that. And it's interesting because actually Brodie Clark last month was noticing that there was a surge in FAQ rich enhancements, rich snippets in search results that we hadn't been seeing for a while. I wonder if that sort of surge in FAQ snippets will kind of sustain its volume after this update. But one thing, if you're not taking advantage of structured data using FAQ, Brodie saw that like in search queries that it is shooting up. And one great thing, if you're using a tool like SEMrush or Ahrefs, you can see over time how rich snippets are kind of going up or going down. Something to play with if you use one of those tools to see how that's fluctuating, because whether or not they're actually driving traffic to your site, at the very least, their brand awareness. So Siva actually reached out to Glenn Gabe recently, and he was like, I was working on GA4 and trying to look at my AMP pages and didn't see them in there. And so Glenn Gabe, went to the GA4 kind of product evangelist, the woman who knows everything with GA4, Krista Seiden, and asked, what's the deal with GA4 and AMP? And it turns out that GA4 actually doesn't show AMP URLs yet when it comes to, the analytics. It doesn't support it. Is it something that they're going to fix? Hopefully sooner rather than later, because AMP still matters even if Google's not going full throttle on it, and we need to be able to, support that type of content and that type of website. Additionally, with GA4, and we talk about a lot about GA4 because it's universal analytics is getting sunset, so everyone needs to learn GA4 over the next year. But Mary Albright actually on Twitter pointed out that GA4 doesn't really have any way to annotate it yet, which is problematic. I mean, Universal Analytics only had minimal annotations. That wasn't something that was really fleshed out anyway, but Krista, supported that notion that no, there's no way to really annotate GA4 yet, which is really frustrating for SEOs, but hopefully they add that feature. I mean, they're getting a lot of feedback, the GA4 team, so I feel like that would be a valuable one for them to include. And Duda put together a webinar, and the timing is so on point because they had Barry Schwartz, Search Engine Roundtable, and all the SEO publications, John Mueller from the search team, and Dr. Marie Haynes of Marie Haynes Consulting, talking all about 2022 and Google search so far. And specifically, Dr. Haynes is like an expert when it comes to weathering Google update algorithms. And she did not know that this May 2022 core algorithm update was coming, but through this webinar covered a whole range of ways to weather those storms, to be prepared, how to pivot or adjust, what you can do when an algorithm rocks your site. So check out that webinar. Duda puts together some great webinars, and this is another one, full hour, and just answering questions. And I think there's a lot of insights there that are super valuable. When it comes to general SEO, so Joost de Valk of Joost put together, I hope I pronounced it, is it Joost? Sorry, Joost. Anyway, put together a nice little article all around kind of highlighting the fact that CMSs like WordPress generate a ton of URLs every time that you create a site or create a page, unless you've really gone into the configurations and adjusted it for your own purposes. So for instance, there's a URL for the RSS feed, and there's a URL for embeds, and for the REST API and JSON versions. All these URLs are generated, and the same is for a variety of different CMSs. And it's problematic because we have a crawling issue globally. One thing that just points out is that Google and search engines in general are crawling all over the internet, and crawling is not free. It takes computing power, it takes electricity, and it's a ton of electricity and computing power to do that. You have data centers, and the cost, like the financial cost, skyrockets, but also the environmental cost of all that crawling. And what he says that you should be mindful of is taking the necessary, tactics or precautions to reduce the amount of URLs that are produced that search engines are inevitably going to find and crawl. And so you can go into your, WordPress settings and, aka first off, block robot text, use the robot text file to block certain types of URLs, or just not have them generated in the first place. If you are a developer and you work on any of these CMSs, you can look under the hood and reduce the amount of URLs, completely unnecessary URLs, that are being generated. I appreciate the call out about the environment. I know Sitebulb has an initiative where they actually plant trees for anytime someone does a free trial of their software or signs up for their newsletter. So actually that's a plug, but go sign up for their newsletter and plant a tree through Sitebulb. But just being, kind of environmentally aware that despite all of this being in the digital world, there are very much real resource costs and environmental impact of everything that we're doing with the computing power and the electricity that's being, used for these events. Really cool article. I appreciate just doing that. So on Wordlift, Valentina Izzo put together, she highlights the importance and value for e-commerce sites of the product graph. The idea that if you want to show up on various, the shopping pages or show up in an organic search for your products, that using the merchant feed or the manufacturer feed that Google provides, which you can use for free, it's not just for ads, as well as structured data, that you can provide the correct information to Google to show up on all of these e-commerce instances on Google, whether it's shopping pages or organic ads or getting, more rich enhancements of your organic listings. She kind of provides a step-by-step on A, the value of that, and B, how you can do that. She has actually a companion article that she wrote, but it's really important if you're in e-commerce to provide the correct structured data of your products, whether it's, attributes or descriptions or information, or whether it's in stock or pricing. All of that can be communicated to Google with structured data. There are a variety of tools, including Wordlift, that can help you out with that. But it just, it shows that, we live in a world where it's like, if we can provide as much information in an organized way to Google, you're more likely to see your rankings go up, because that information has to match, and you're doing Google a service, and that's how you get out there. So Cyrus Shepard, who's been working on Zyppy, which is a A/B testing tool for things like title tags, put together a really cool report where he looked at millions and millions and millions of pages and wanted to identify the impact of internal linking. One thing that he kind of zeroed in on was the volume of internal links and how that impacts your rankings, the anchor text, so the variability of the anchor text, using different types of anchor text for internal links, as well as an actual naked anchor text. So if you're just actually putting the URL and linking to the page that way, does that help or actually hurt your rankings? And he, looking into the methodology, he says, it's hard to come to any fast, hard conclusions, but some of the kind of insights that he found are that more internal links are associated with higher traffic, but only to a point. Once you get a whole ton of internal links, then it actually starts to have the reversed impact that he found. And he attributed this, to bigger sites versus smaller sites. It's actually different when you start to segment the size of the site. Site-wide navigation links seem to have a power effect, and he says for this, mostly on larger, high authority sites. The effectiveness is less clear on small, lower authority sites. Anchor text variety is actually higher correlated with search traffic. So you don't want to just use the same anchor text for every single internal link. Try to switch it up for keyword variations, and that will actually drive higher search traffic, which makes sense. Then Google knows all these varieties of keywords. He found that naked URLs, as I mentioned, anchors don't seem to hurt. In fact, they're associated with more traffic. So in certain situations, using the naked URL, like the actual written text of the URL link, could be the way to go. I would assume it'd be interesting to look if there are certain types of URLs. Naturally, if you have a long URL that's actually written out, that's not a great user experience. So I'd assume that it would be URLs of a certain length, but that wasn't done in the study. And then finally, at least some exact match anchors are associated with significant higher traffic. So you do want to make sure that you actually have the specific keyword that you want to tie to the page that you're linking to. That exact match will actually help in the rankings. Really cool study. Always keep an eyes peeled on Zyppy. They're always coming out with really interesting reports using data. Good work, Cyrus, on that. Alea Solis put together a great article on Search Engine Land all about SEO reporting. Basically, she focused on having your executive summary and then having your problems and solutions with a data appendix. She said it's important to highlight the right business KPIs and that there's a lot of value. It's really important that you're telling the right story with the data and adjusting the way you visually present the data to make that story more accessible, more easily consumable. So, she says when you're presenting, you've got these reportings, it's important in the report to say, the setup, what's happening, the conflict, why did it happen, and then the resolution. How do you proceed? Where do you go from there? As whether you're working in-house or you're an agency or consultant helping a client, the storytelling of your reporting is so critical to make sure that the intended stakeholder understands what you're trying to do with SEO, why, the context of what's happening, and what you can do. So there's buy-in, so you can then go and execute and solve that problem, with your expertise and your suggestions. Great article by Aleda. In the world of technical SEO, Leaffoot on Search Engine Journal put together this really cool app using Streamlit. So basically, it's an ability to create subcategories using all of your e-commerce products, basically using data from Screaming Frog, segmenting the right entities from, your vast, catalog of products, putting it through his script that he created, and identifying ways to kind of combine the products for these subcategories with a certain amount of search volume. You can actually modify that using the Streamlit app, and then identifying where you might want to make landing pages for these subcategories. And it's a way, the benefit of this process that he really streamlined will allow you to, generate a ton of search traffic for more niches of your product. It's great because it actually ties back to like the parent categories as well, but he gives you the whole step-by-step of how to do all of it. So even if you're not the most technical person, all you need is Screaming Frog, Streamlit, and actually Keywords Anywhere to identify the search volume. Really cool article. Lee is always doing these really interesting things using Python for SEO. A big congrats to Arij Abouali and the team at Women in Tech SEO. It is their 3rd birthday, and they put together some highlights of what they've accomplished, which is absolutely incredible. Honestly, I always say this, I've got such FOMO of that community. I realize it's for women, but they're doing such great things anecdotally that I've heard, whether it's like in their Slack group or the festival that they put together, the WTS Fest. So many people who are tied to that community are producing amazing articles and podcasts and insights, newsletters. I mean, you just look through the list of everything that they've done from their tweet that they point out, and it's a testament. It's a testament to building community and what happens when people come together and support each other, and to another 15, 20, 30 years of Women in Tech SEO. What a great community. Great job, Arij. Kudos to you. In the world of tools, so Cindy Crum of Mobile Moxie, her team put out the Pageoscope Chrome extension, which is really, really cool. There are 10 free trials. It is a paid extension, but basically what it does is you go to a website, you click on the extension, and it takes you over and shows you the HTML and the rendered JavaScript version of the site in the code, as well as both the mobile and the desktop version. So you can look and identify the differences, like it highlights red and green, so that you can ensure that the content, especially in a mobile first indexing world, that the content on the mobile is including everything that you want in the desktop, so that Google can index all of the appropriate pages, all the appropriate content, so you can rank appropriately. It's a really great Chrome extension. I tried it out myself, obviously on Target and our own site. Try it out, see if it works for you. Majorly helpful for SEOs. And then another tool, not really SEO related, but the research team at Google created Imogen. I just thought it's a fun call out. It's one of those kind of GPT-3 types of projects where by the input of just describing something, describing a visual image, it's able to create photorealistic versions of whatever you're saying. And some of them are absurd. I don't know why the team is obsessed with raccoons on their example page or, little mammals, but I think it really gives a lot of insight to the direction of AI and image creation. And in some ways, I think it's very powerful and it's going to be amazing for content creation. I think in other ways, it's very scary because any technology can be used for good and it also can be used for evil. Be very curious to hear your opinions of this technology, what potential that you see, as well as what, negative consequences or bad uses we could see of something like that. But very cool tool, very cool, demo of what its capabilities are. And then finally, Screaming Frog had an update which is aptly titled By the Sea, codename, in honor of Bill Slawski, who passed away a couple weeks ago. In their update, a couple of really interesting, cool features, including the ability to using regex to exclude certain URLs, as well as the ability to look at URL events over time, like visually, to see how they've gone up and down. And of course, dark mode. Who doesn't love dark mode? But always great work from the Screaming Frog team. Really impressed with that update. And finally, if you've got nothing else going on today, this afternoon at 2:30, myself and Kyle Marino are hosting a webinar for iPullRank of the content rebalancing framework. Really excited to talk about how you can pick out certain topic clusters and the URLs associated with them from your website, how you can use a workflow to basically identify using metrics which URLs to get rid of, which ones to just improve, which ones to merge with other URLs, or just which ones to leave as is, to refresh and rebalance all the link equity of your existing URLs, how frequently you should do it, who should be in charge of it, what's the value. Check out the webinar, really psyched about it. I put together some fun GIFs, there are a ton of slides, there's a spreadsheet template that you'll be able to get afterwards, and would love for you to register and join. And you'll be able to, even if you can't make it, register for the event. We'll send the replay after with the template. But that is it. Another SEO Weekly in the books. I appreciate you hanging out every Tuesday with me. Well, normally Mondays. There's a holiday yesterday in the US, but every Monday doing the SEO Weekly. I just love our industry. I love seeing what everyone's producing. There's so many diverse, great voices. If you enjoy the series, please subscribe. Subscribe on YouTube, hit the like, share. Appreciate you spreading the word around, increasing the YouTube algorithm, rankings and showing up on other people's feeds. My name is Garrett Sussman of iPullRank. Until next Monday, you have a wonderful week. And if you have an SEO tip, send it my way. I'll always love talking SEO. Have a good one.